Look, the Yankees and Dodgers are both staring down the same problem right now, and his name is Kyle Tucker. Here's the reality: Tucker is the best outfielder on the market, but we need to talk about whether he's actually worth what he's going to cost. Because when you're looking at projections around $427 million, we need to ask some serious questions about what you're actually getting for that price tag. The Blue Jays just locked up Dylan Cease, which suddenly makes things interesting. Does that open the door wider for New York to go all in on Tucker? Maybe. But for the Dodgers, this is where I start pumping the brakes. Tucker's not a guy who's elite at any one particular thing. He's very good at multiple things, sure. But is that worth north of $400 million when he's already dealt with injury concerns? I'm not convinced. If you can get him at the Cody Bellinger price point around $325 for 10 years, then absolutely, you have that conversation. But when we're talking about matching what Juan Soto just got or approaching Mookie Betts money, that's where I start having real problems with the fit. The Dodgers have needed to address their outfield for 2 straight seasons now. It's been one of the worst units in baseball, and that's not hyperbole. You can't run it back with just Teoscar in one corner, Andy Pages in center, Tommy Edmonds scattered around, and hope that James Outman or Ryan Ward suddenly figure it out. That's not a plan. That's crossing your fingers and hoping for miracles. You need a legitimate, proven, everyday outfielder who can hit, play defense, and not disappear for months at a time. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, Cody Bellinger. Yes, I know what I've said before about not reheating McDonald's French fries, but hear me out. At the right price, Bellinger makes sense. His timeline matches up perfectly with this core. He already knows what it means to play in Los Angeles. He understands the pressure, the expectations, the media scrutiny, and here's something people forget. He's the 16th toughest hitter to strike out in all of Major League Baseball. The swing and miss that plagued him in those down years, it's mostly gone. You're getting above average offense and above average defense, and when that deal expires in a few years, maybe he slides over to first base after Freddie Freeman hangs it up. Now, am I at a 10 out of 10 excitement level like I was for Shohei Ohtani or Yoshinobu Yamamoto? Absolutely not. But desperate times call for realistic measures. The outfield is broken. You need someone who can contribute immediately without mortgaging the entire farm system or committing $500 million to a player with injury red flags. Let's shift to the trade market because honestly, this is where things get more interesting than free agency unless you're swinging for Tucker. William Abreu from the Red Sox is out there. He's only 26 years old, which means you're getting younger while adding talent. 110 weighted runs created plus means he's 10% above league average. He's got some pop in his bat, and defensively, he's one of the best right fielders in baseball. The concerns, injuries have been an issue, and he absolutely cannot hit left-handed pitching. But if the price is right in prospects, he's worth exploring. Byron Buxton is my top trade target right now. 136 weighted runs created plus last season. He made the All-Star team. He's an above-average defender. He's got 2 years and $45 million left on his deal. If Minnesota is willing to move him and he waives that no-trade clause to come to Los Angeles, you make that deal immediately. He aligns perfectly with the prime years of Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Will Smith. He's a leader. The only downside, there's been some talk he wants to DH more to preserve his body, which creates its own complications. Brendan Donovan from the Cardinals is another fascinating option. Versatility is his calling card. You could platoon him in left with Ryan Ward if you want to give the kid a shot. He's not going to cost much financially, though the prospect price might be steep. Here's something interesting. The Dodgers were already interested in trading for him at the deadline last year. Nothing happened, but that interest was real. He hit .287 with 119 weighted runs created plus. He only strikes out 13.5% of the time. He doesn't have a ton of power, but his average exit velocity is in the 94th to 96th percentile. The Dodgers love players who hit the ball hard, and Donovan does that. Defensively, he's just okay, basically league average, but at the right price, he's intriguing. Let me give you some deeper cuts that people aren't talking about enough. Jarren Duran from Boston is right there beneath Buxton as my second best trade option. He hit .285, 31% above league average. He hits the ball hard, gets you doubles, and he's one of the fastest players in the league. The Blue Jays just made a move that's flying completely under the radar, but trust me, there's a method to this madness. And when you dig into the numbers, this signing actually addresses a very specific problem that plagued Toronto throughout last season and even into the playoffs. Plus, we've got major trade news from the AL East that could impact the entire free agent market, so stick with me here. All right, so the news just broke from Ariel Alexander. The Toronto Blue Jays are signing infielder Rodolfo Castro to a minor league deal with a spring training invite. Now, before you click away thinking this is just some random depth piece that doesn't matter, let me explain why this is actually pretty smart. Castro spent all of 2024 in AAA with the Phillies organization, but he's got nearly 200 games of major league experience between Pittsburgh and Philadelphia from 2021 to 2023. You might recognize the name if you follow the Pirates or Phillies closely. He's had some moments at the big league level, particularly one solid season back in 2022. But here's what makes this signing interesting. Rob Wong pointed out the one thing Castro does exceptionally well, and it's exactly what the Blue Jays desperately needed. This guy absolutely destroys left-handed pitching. We're talking about a 958 OPS and a 264 ISO against lefties in 239 career plate appearances. Those are legitimately elite splits. Think back to last season. Remember how many times the Jays were scrambling for someone to pinch hit against tough left-handed relievers? They tried to address it at the deadline by bringing in Ty France. During the playoff run, they were constantly pinch hitting guys like Miles Straw in key situations against lefties because they just didn't have that weapon on the bench. Well, now they've got a guy who, if he performs in spring training, could fill that exact role. Now, let's be realistic about what we're looking at here. Castro is coming off a down year, though he didn't actually play in the majors during 2024. He spent the entire season in AAA, where he posted a 235 average with a 421 slugging percentage. Those numbers aren't spectacular, but they're solid for the minor league level. When you go back to his last full big league season in 2023, things get a bit uglier. He posted a negative 27 OPS plus with the Phillies before getting traded to Pittsburgh, where he put up an 83 OPS plus. But again, 2022 was when he showed what he's capable of, posting a 103 OPS plus with the Pirates. The key here is understanding what role the Jays envision for him. He's only 26 years old, so there's still some developmental upside here. He's played parts of 3 big league seasons, with most of his experience coming in Pittsburgh. When you look at his defensive metrics from his last full season, he shows pretty good arm strength at shortstop, though obviously the Jays aren't looking at him as their starting shortstop with Adrelton Jimenez in that role. The advanced analytics on his overall hitting aren't great, but that's not why they're bringing him in. This is a very specific role. They're bringing him to spring training to see if he can continue mashing left-handed pitching. If he does what he's done historically against lefties, he's going to make this roster as a bench bat. And here's the beautiful part. It's a minor league contract. There's literally zero risk here. If he doesn't perform, they release him and move on. If he does perform, they've found a solution to a problem that cost them games last year. Baseball America profiled him during his prospect days as a serviceable defender at all 3 infield positions and projected him as a future bench piece. That's exactly what the Jays are hoping he becomes. Now, depending on what happens with Bo Bichette, with their infield situation, with their overall roster construction, the bench is pretty uncertain right now. You've got Ernie Clement, who can play multiple positions, David Schneider, who's versatile, Miles Straw in the outfield mix, Leo Jimenez as depth, and Tyler Heineman as your backup catcher. But here's what matters. If Bo Bichette walks or gets traded, if they make other moves that shift the roster around, having a guy like Castro who excels in a specific role gives them flexibility. Nobody's saying Rodolfo Castro is the answer if Bo leaves. That would be absurd. But you can never have too much organizational depth, especially when that depth comes with a specific skill set that addresses a clear weakness from last season. And let's be clear about one thing. This signing doesn't impact their ability to spend big money whatsoever. This is a minor league deal. This doesn't touch their payroll unless he makes the major league roster. This doesn't prevent them from going after Anthony Santander or any other impact bat. This is simply smart organizational depth that costs them virtually nothing. Now let's talk about the other major news that just dropped, because this could have significant implications for the free agent market. Jeff Passan just reported that the Boston Red Sox are acquiring right-hander Sonny Gray in a trade with the St. Louis Cardinals. John Heyman had it first. Gray had a no-trade clause but agreed to waive it to go to Boston. We're still waiting on the full return as I'm talking to you now, but this is a pretty significant move. Here's why this matters for the Blue Jays. That's another team, another competitor in the AL East. That's probably not going after the high-end starting pitchers in free agency now. Maybe it doesn't completely take them out of that market. The Red Sox have shown they're always willing to make moves for starting pitching. Last offseason, they traded for Garrett Crochet and then extended him. Now they're adding Sonny Gray, who's a very solid veteran arm. But if I'm the Blue Jays, this is actually encouraging news. That's one less team bidding on guys like Roki Sasaki or Ranger Suarez. And like Keegan Matheson said on my show a couple weeks ago, the Jays need to go after the highest-end talent available. Whether that's Sasaki, whether that's Suarez, whether it's someone else entirely, there are multiple players they can target that I would personally prefer over Sonny Gray, and those guys won't cost prospects to acquire. You can't imagine the Red Sox gave up a massive haul for Gray, but they did give up something. Meanwhile, the Jays can go sign their top target without surrendering any assets. Gray also had a no-trade clause, so he had some control over where he landed. If multiple teams were interested, he could pick his destination. He chose Boston, which tells you something about where he thinks they're headed. The free agent market is slowly starting to heat up, folks. And more importantly, the trade market is starting to move. Remember, Ross Atkins came out back on November 11th and said they're going to be active in the trade market and that they'd already checked in on multiple pieces. I'd assume Sonny Gray was probably one of those names they called about. They're definitely going to be looking at other starting pitchers available via trade. Seeing the market develop now through both free agency signings like Castro and trades like the Gray deal makes things pretty encouraging heading into the winter meetings. Speaking of which, there's a new report that dropped this morning. Multiple league sources expect the reliever market to pick up around the start of the winter meetings, which are just a couple weeks away. This is specifically regarding guys like Ryan Helsley, who the Jays have been linked to through Keegan Matheson's reporting. Helsley remains open-minded to the free agent process and is eager to prove he's capable of returning to his all-star form. So it seems like most of the big moves are going to wait until the winter meetings, which is pretty standard. We see this every year, whether it was Shohei Ohtani, whether it was Juan Soto. The marquee free agents tend to wait for that deadline. And especially in this case with Kyle Tucker, trade talks, which I fully expect the Jays to be heavily involved in. We're probably going to see most of the action compressed into those few days in early December. One last thing before I wrap up, and I hate bringing this up, but it needs to be addressed. John Mattingly recently spoke out about the bases-loaded play in Game 7 of the World Series. He actually admitted they made an error, not that Isaiah Keener-Falefa made an error, but that the coaching staff made a mistake. Mattingly's no longer with the Jays. He's looking for work elsewhere, but he addressed that crucial moment. For those who don't remember or have tried to block it out, Dalton Varsho was at bat, one out, IKF at third base. Mattingly admitted that most of the time, IKF being that close to the bag was the right positioning. But because Varsho doesn't hit line drives to third base very often, IKF should have been one or two steps further off the bag. Alejandro Kirk at first base was hugging the bag, protecting against the double play, which made sense because Varsho hits a ton of line drives to first. He doesn't pull line drives down the third baseline. So IKF should have been playing further off, which means Mattingly essentially admitted the coaching staff cost them a run in that moment. Now, obviously, it goes way beyond just that one play, but it's interesting to hear that admission. It's painful to revisit, but I'm over it at this point. We've got to push forward and focus on the moves that are on the horizon and what next season's going to look like. Bottom line, the Castro signing is smart depth that addresses a specific need against left-handed pitching. The Sonny Gray trade removes a competitor from the free agent market, and we're just a couple weeks away from the winter meetings where everything is going to accelerate. The Jays are positioning themselves to be active. They're making the right kinds of depth moves, and hopefully they're about to make some serious splashes when the market really opens up. Let me know your thoughts on all of this down below.